Welcome to Clap Back with the Facts podcast, where we are providing you with the information you need to know about what's politically impacting Black women across the country. In a world filled with mis and disinformation, we provide you with the real. If you're a Black woman, representing Black women, or in the community with Black women, we are here to clap back and give you the facts. Thank you for joining episode 26, Black Women Ran and Many Won, Victories You Need to Know About. We will be sharing the facts and dropping gems, so let's get ready to clap back with the facts.
Hello. Are we all excited about what has happened in the election? I suspect that you have been online, and as you have been online, it has all been about the race for the presidency. And it is true that Kamala did not win, but it is also true that a whole lot of Black women did. And so we are here today to talk about all of the Black women who ran and the many Black women who won. Hundreds of Black women around this country and states that you probably never thought Black women were even running, much less winning, have won. And we, as Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, Clap Back, Get the Facts podcast, we are here to talk about it all. Because as you know, we talk about Black women running, and now we're going to talk about the victories and all the things that you need to know about the full landscape and picture of Black women running for office in 2024. I, of course, do not look at this by myself, and I am not going to do so today. So I want to welcome back to the podcast streets our sister Chantel Mullen and Simone Henderson. Hey, y'all, what's going on? Welcome back to the podcast.
What's happening?
How y'all doing?
We're going to do all right. That's for sure. You know, and so I want to jump right into this. I am ready to deliver and share some good news about this election, while also recognizing the important role that Vice President Harris played. And so before we get into all of the joy, happy stuff, I want to start with this joy moment around Vice President Harris's race. And I am wearing one of the t-shirts of the many t-shirts that I will continue to wear out of respect and honor to her. And I want to say there are so many ways that we advance as a community through elections. Winning a race is a very important part of how we advance. But we also advance, and we absolutely did in this case, advance when we build infrastructure. And Black women were able to do a hell of a job exponentially building infrastructure. I have been in communication for the last umpteen weeks since the election. And I'm going to tell you, every single Black woman-led organization has talked about how their membership, their volunteerism, their partnerships have been strengthened and grown as a result of this campaign. I am not talking about the campaign itself, but I am talking about the leadership and the opportunity for leadership that Vice President Harris presented that inspired communities to come together in different ways, that inspired Black women in particular to show up in ways that they've never shown up for before. And so I want this podcast in particular for folks to resonate with the power of the 92% of Black women. And I frankly think it's higher than that. I don't know where them 6% people was. But 92% of Black women who showed up and did the thing. And if you consider yourself part of the 92%, I want you to proudly lift your head and recognize that while you may not have elected a president, you elected so many Black people And we're going to talk about the Black women in particular today. We could start by talking about the senators, but I don't want to spend too much time on them because y'all already know that. But I will say two things about the federal election real quick, and then I'd love to hear you all's perspective on the federal part before we get into the nitty gritty. Federally, we now have 2 Black women United States senators. We've never had 2 Black women United States senators serving at the same time. But also, and y'all know I don't really do Black men that much on the podcast, but I'm going to bring some Black men into this too. We also have 3 Black men serving at the same time, which, assuming one doesn't get sucked into the administration, and it's not looking good for him, bless his heart, we will have 5 Black people serving in the United States Senate at the same freaking time. That has never happened in the history of the United States Senate, of the United States Congress. Even going back to Reconstruction, we only had 2 United States senators, and they did not serve together. So we are in the throes of real power, and we are going to be relying on them. Well, let's be honest. We're going to be relying on 4 of them. One of them may be less reliable. But they all serving together. I mean, literally, we now have enough people in the Senate for us to have a Senate Black caucus. That's amazing.
Okay.
That's all
you say so.
Does not caucus with the rest.
I'm just saying we have enough. I ain't say it's a thing.
Well, okay. You did that. You're correct. You did say
that. Okay. I'm just saying it's a moment. And it's a moment made possible by Black people and Black women. And I don't want the people who are part of the 92% or the 84% on the men's side to think that their vote did not matter. And this narrative that we didn't have an impact or we didn't do anything or it wasn't enough is quite frankly expletive language coming bullshit. That's all I want to say. That's all. I'm going to say this throughout this podcast. It's just craziness, absolute insanity. And then let's go to the House of Representatives. On the congressional side, well, let's also note that the Congressional Black Caucus in this cycle, the 2023-2024 Congress, I think we're on 118th Congress, was largest Black caucus we have ever seen in the history of our country, 60 members. 60. And yet, in the 2025-2026 119th Congress, the Congressional Black Caucus grows to 63. I'm just saying. That's because of Black people. Thank you, 92%ers. Understand what that means. Think about the fact that the conscience of the Congress has now expanded. It's insanity. And we got to understand what that means. And we need those expansions now more than ever. Because those are the voices that are going to be fighting and towing the line. And maybe they hoeing a little bit too. I ain't going to say they're going to stick a leg out. They will be the ones holding the line, right? Holding the line for the values, the principles, and let's not forget the programs that we all care about. So having those gains is super important, and it shows again the power of our infrastructure. So what do you guys think about that? What do you think? You think I'm just being Pollyanna out here in these streets, or you think we got something to celebrate?
Oh, we absolutely have something to celebrate. I think framing it as anything other than that is perpetuating a false narrative. No, it's democracy, it's America. Nobody walks away getting 100% of everything they thought they wanted. That's not how this works. That's not like when you signed up for democracy, that's just not how it works. But when you lay out the numbers the way you just had, there's no argument that we did not make historic leaps and bounds with the 2024 election. That's just a period point. That those are the facts of the matter.
Those are the facts of the matter, people.
Those are the facts of the matter. So when you sit back, I think it's hard because the national narrative and media has been dominated by, because we didn't win the presidency, then we didn't win. And that's just not true. And I think, spaces like this, and you talk about, you've met with other Black women organizations and the celebration of what we were able to accomplish. I think bringing that into more spaces and amplifying that helps set the tone for, one, showing just what we're capable of, showing up to the polls, the power of the vote, and then helping to combat this narrative that also aids in that disenfranchises voters from showing up when we are at this point where we are making leaps and bounds like we have never made before. So I think absolutely, if nothing else, you scream these things at the mountaintops to let folks know, oh, no. That one election is not representative of the progress that we are making.
Chantel, your take.
Well, and I agree with both you and Simone. One of the things that happens during a presidential cycle is we tend to get hyper focused on that presidential election. And, there are some pluses and minuses to that. But we forget that there are other races and there are other spaces that we should be looking to have our candidates win. The president doesn't govern alone. Right. And the way our system of democracy is set up, we need people at all levels. We need people in all spaces. And so just to walk away and say, oh my gosh, we lost one race, but we won a large number of other races that people aren't paying attention to. And those races will make a difference in communities and in people's lives. And who's going to be at the table to have discussions. And so, excuse me. So I think we need to reset and have a conversation, because we are looking at this like, I'm gonna just say we're looking at this like we got a batter at the home plate, and whether that batter hits it has to be a home run or nothing. And we need to realize that not only did the batter who got up there may not have hit a home run, but when they swung and they hit it, they may have gotten out, but other runners advanced around the base.
Oh, great. Queen of analogies. Go ahead with your metaphor. I love it.
And
other players advanced.
Yeah, we got to remember that the game is not one person. The system is not one person. And while that person ultimately did not get a home run, she actually made it all the way to third base.
Right.
She just didn't make it home. But other runners advanced. Other runners got on base. Other runners crossed home plate. There are other people who looked at her race and say, I want to now get in the game.
Yep.
There are other people who looked at this race and said, I want to help people and train people in the game. I need to fund folks to help, build a better field for them to play on.
Yeah, that
So
part.
we need to think about all of the pieces. And I think for me, people were calling me crying, having a moment. And, for me, it was bigger than one person because I'm thinking about everybody. And there were a lot of winners. And we've got
Mhm.
other people who are thinking about running. We need to be thinking about those people.
Yeah.
We need to be talking about what we learned from this, where we need to make changes, what we need to do different, because there's always another race.
Yeah.
There are people declaring right now. There are people
Hmm.
deciding to run right now. We need to be looking, what did we learn from this?
Right.
We've only had well, from my perspective, I'm in the Democratic Party. We've only had 2 women to run. Both of those women made strides in different ways, even though neither one of them won.
Hmm.
There were different things that happened. We really need to have a conversation about what happened and why, and what we can do differently. Our country has not had a woman in that top seat. And we've gotten a vice president, but we have not gotten a president. And so we really need to do some soul searching. We need to do
Hmm.
some data analysis. We need
Hmm.
to not only do data analysis and messaging analysis, but we need to do behavior analysis. That I think is a key. It came to me this morning
Okay.
because I think we need to talk about behaviors and think about, because we often talk about people voting against their interest. There are a lot of things that people do against their interests. People go to doctors' offices all the time, and doctors tell them, you need to take this medicine, and they don't take it. You need to do X, Y, and Z for your health. They don't do it.
Yeah.
So against interest is not a new concept. We need
Right.
to talk to, I mean, there are people who study behavior. Maybe we need to bring them on board and talk about that and help inform
Yeah.
some of the messaging and some of the practices that are happening out in the field.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, let's be honest. I have one thing in particular that I've been saying to people. We've got to stop acting like the Republicans have this magical strategy. They
Right.
do not. And the reality is, we spent this election trying to be like them, and they spent this election taking our playbook. And the reality is they won on our playbook and we lost on theirs. And the reason is because we've got to stay and remember that, yes, there is some logic to this. And yes, there is some thinking to this. But people are more than just logic models, as you have shared, Chantel. People want to feel like they have those intangibles as well. They want to be able to trust. They want to be able to believe. They want to be able to be engaged. And, we can't keep running these campaigns at the cost of our values or our humanity. And we know that while nationally that may have been part of the approach, in other races, we saw something completely different. And as a result of that, and as a result of people coming together, not because Democrats told them to, or Republicans told them not to, or any party told them anything at all, but because they recognized that this was a moment to engage and build power. And so, to your point, Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote has been tracking Black women candidates for a few years now, and we enter into our largest identification of Black women running for office at over 1,200 women who ran for office this cycle. Now, all of them did not proceed into the general election, but out of the, and I want to note here that out of the 1,200 women who ran for off 12 plus 12, 1,204 to be exact, that we had 435 that were incumbents, but we had a whopping 771 women who were running as challengers. 771. Now wrap your mind around that. And then to your point about party, overwhelmingly, the reason that we spend so much time talking about Democratic politics and Democrats in general, and I want to take this opportunity to be super clear about that, is not because we're Democrats, although some of us are. It is because Black women are running as Democrats. 810 Black women ran as Democrats, while only 57 ran as Republicans, and then another 300 ran in nonpartisan races. But 810 Black women ran as Democrats. So we talk about the Democratic Party because it's the party that is hosting where the vast majority of Black women candidates are finding their home. And so, yes, it is about the issues in our community, but it is also about supporting the Black women whose leadership is holding up our representation and who is, and let me be clear, whether they win or lose, they represent Black women's leadership in our community. And then shout out to your home state of Georgia, Chantel, where we saw 196 Black women in Georgia alone run for office. And so I think when we think about, to your point about how there is an inspiration to run, I predict that number is going to be even larger in 2026. And so as we think about what's coming, we got a whole lot of Black women who are about to hit those campaign streets. And we need to make sure that not only that they're ready, because that's a thing, but just as importantly, they're going to need us all over again. And the good news is that the Black women's infrastructure around support, around advocacy, around civic engagement, around support for these campaigns is stronger than ever. And let me tell you, sisters, of my 92 percenters, we are going to need every single one of you again and more and more. So I want to pivot just for a second and talk about the Georgia story. What do you think is the inspiration for 196 women to run for office in Georgia?
Well, one, I think we're asking them to run. That's the first thing. And I think we are creating the space for them to run. The research shows that women have to be asked several times before they'll really consider running. And I think what Georgia has done very successfully is we've started asking people to run, encouraging them to run. And then the sisters who have run are helping the sisters who want to run. The sisters who are in elected office are helping the sisters who have run. And so, I know me personally, anytime a sister tells me that they are running, I may not be able to work on her campaign full time, but I still consult with them. I still give them something, or I help find them somebody to help them do something. And so I think simply creating that kind of network where sisters feel like if I jump, there's somebody out there that's one, jumping with me, and two, willing to catch me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
And also willing to push me on up.
Yeah, that part. Go ahead, Simone.
I had to start writing down because my mind was going. So it's early, but I'm already writing. It brought me full circle to something both of you mentioned earlier. Holly, when you said, the Republican playbook and monopolizing that, and Chantel, when you mentioned running again and running in different seats and the importance of that, I think Georgia's the perfect representative of that, of what it means to run all across the state, up and down the ballot, to build that infrastructure for Black women to, even if they don't win that first time, you're building the foundation for more Black women to hold elected office across the state. And I think that is something that we are seeing more of, and Georgia is really representative of that, where I think when people think about Georgia politics, especially over the last 4, 5, 6 years, their mind goes to Black women. Whether or not that is the primary electorate in the state, I think we've done, and Black women have done such a good job of showing that, of demonstrating that they will show up anywhere and everywhere across the state and run for office. And that's something that we may not see in other states, but it's a model that can be replicated with the kind of support that you talk about, Chantel. Even if I don't have 40 hours a week to dedicate to your campaign, you know that we are building something larger here. And so that mindset of what's possible for the state and where we can engage throughout the state, I think, those women are empowered to run again. Yes, we encourage those women because I think Georgia has been a blueprint for what's possible of Black women building infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And not for nothing, but let's talk about the fact that Georgia not only has the example of Vice President Harris, but of Stacey Abrams as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be thoughtful in thinking about the impression to have a Black woman run a very competitive race at the top of the state ticket, and how the layering of that has clearly taken hold in Georgia. And also the infrastructure of Black women-led organizations in Georgia is also no small feat, because what that does is it creates centers for Black women's leadership. So we don't just see in Georgia the possibility of a Black woman governor. We also see Black women heading corporations. We see Black women leading organizations, national organizations that have both state, local, and national impact. We see them leading in healthcare, in tech, and in various industries. And we need to understand that the more we see Black women leading in all the spaces, I think that is as contributory as the fact that they are being asked. And I think there is a correlation between the amplification, not just the promotion of their leadership, but the fact that we are talking constantly about their leadership and profiling these leaders and making sure that people know that they have a voice, that they exist, and that they're doing all the things. And we are getting much, much, much better at communicating about their leadership. And that, I think, allows more people to feel seen and heard and inspired to run. So I think you guys have definitely rounded it out with that. So I am going to ask you about your favorite races, but before I do that, I want to give people a snapshot of what it looks like in the states, because the state legislatures is something that really resonated for me. For one, we had 526 Black women who ran for the state legislators. And I'm still kind of unpacking this. But of those that ran for the state, 526 ran in the primary. Of those, 361, and if you're doing math, if your math is mathing, that's that's just over 70% of those 576 Black women advanced to the general. And then of that 361 that advanced to the general, 257 were actually elected to serve. And if my math is mathing right, that's again around 70%. Now, I don't know about you, but if you happen to be a person who cares about winning, sounds to me like Black women are the people to invest and bet on in an election, because I want to see what other demographic is electing people at 70+% across the board, not just in primaries, but in generals. And I think that part of our joy and part of our story has got to be this investment in Black women's leadership, because it pays off. And I don't know about you, but I want to note here that these are happening in states across America, not just Georgia, although we just talked a lot about Georgia. These are happening in states across America, and these are happening in all kinds of districts. These are not people representing 200 and what's my number? 257 Black districts. These are 257 people representing all kinds of communities across America: city communities, rural communities, suburban communities, ex-urban communities, and the communities that sit in between, because Black women's leadership cannot be pigeonholed. And more importantly, when we show up for ourselves, as you might expect, but we show up for our communities and everybody in them. So that leads me to round out with the $1 million question. What was your favorite race of 2024? Who were you most excited to see run, win, or otherwise? Favorite races, ones you were watching, ones that made an impression on you. You cannot choose a federal race. No, you can. You can choose whatever race you want. I'm not going to restrict you.
I'll start with my neighboring state, Kentucky.
Okay.
Just because I think the impact that it has when you hear Kentucky, you don't necessarily think Black woman. And so for Pamela Goodwine to become the first Black woman to serve on Kentucky's Supreme Court, I think just shows the leaps
with the judges.
You said no federal, we'll jump judiciary.
Yeah.
I think it shows just what we've spoken about throughout this entire episode. That's a major win. These are things that we don't typically think about that are happening all across the country that should be highlighted and amplified as major wins, because these women are doing the work. She made history the first time by becoming the first Black woman to serve on Kentucky's Court State of Appeals in 2018, and she continues to be elevated and continues to go for more. So I think when you have women, especially, obviously she's had a long career before 2018, but when you look at what's possible and you look at the platform, or not platform, but you look at what we're building, the foundation of what we're building around the country and what seems possible, I think women are jumping in, Black women are jumping in ways that we've never seen before. And I think she's a great example of that.
I love this. I love this for us. What about you, Chantel? What races caught your attention this cycle?
Well, we had a number of Black women who were running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have not had a Black woman to serve as governor, to be elected statewide as a governor.
And so we had 7 Black women running for governor. Is my number right?
Five.
Okay.
Yep. And well, actually we had 6. One ran and lost in the primary.
Okay.
But there were 5 who went on to the general election.
Fair enough.
And so, I'm just wondering, I'm interested to see how they are faring at the statewide level, because one of the things I think and maybe this is for future reports, but looking at what that barrier is to statewide election. We're seeing a lot of success at the local level, but it seems to be and we've now gotten some sisters elected to the Senate. We've got a few more. We need to be a little bit more consistent. We need to study those races to see, because also Brooks' race looked nothing like Blunt Rochester's race. Those were two entirely different races, and they're going to give us two different sets of data and research. But we should be studying all of our sisters that are running in statewide races. Some of those judicial races are statewide races. What does it take for those sisters to win? Because if we are really setting the narrative and helping them understand when they decide to run, not if they run, because I'm claiming sisters are running, but if they decide to run, we can give them actionable information about those races, lessons learned, good and bad, the kinds of resources needed, the kind of staff you need to make that leap and to make it successfully. I think those are some things we should be thinking about for Black women, because somebody's going to crack that barrier. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Yeah. And we need to be helping sisters be prepared. Once you run that race, you gotta give some insights back, so we can pass that baton and get somebody across that finish line.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, I've been constantly saying Black women are winning elections because they understand what they need to do to win. It is in spite of racism, not because we've conquered racism. And it is in spite of sexism, not because we've conquered sexism, but because we figured out how to win anyway. And I think one of the things that we understand and recognize is it may take us a little bit more time. We are at a severe disadvantage, as any candidates are, but us in particular, when we don't take the time, don't have the time in some cases to strategize, don't have the time to raise the money, because we can be competitive in all things, but it may take us a little bit longer to get there because we have to overcome these intangible things. And I think we need to make sure that we are giving and supporting people in that longer runway to give ourselves a little bit more space. And then the other thing is, and I can't remember which of you, it was you, Chantel, that talked about in Georgia, one of the other things is you're seeing campaigns work collectively, work towards collective goals. And we've got to get into that mindset. We need these campaign committees, and I'm really speaking specifically to the DNC, the DSCC, the DGA, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Democratic Governors Association, I'm not going to use the acronyms, Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Democratic State Legislative Committee, Democratic Attorney General's Committee, we need to challenge those actors and those leaders to work more collectively, and in way more frickin' states, so that we are getting a layered and collective effect. We should not be running as Democrats against each other. We should be running as Democrats for each other. And especially once we get to the general. I think my favorite races, honestly, and it are these states' attorneys and attorney generals races in these local counties. We have done phenomenally, and I am looking forward to their service. At the top of my list are the key targets for Republicans. Republicans Trump, Republicans DeSantis, and all that follow their tragic leadership. in Michelle Worrell, who won her reelection bid, even though the man who she beat is saying he's not interested in even discussing transition until his time is all the way up. Again, unconscionable, showing again a lack of respect for a process and for democracy. And DeSantis is already plotting to get her out, and she hasn't even started her next term of service. And so we need to just keep our eyes aware. We win some battles, but we also have to look at winning the war sometimes, or winning future battles. I also want to say a shout out to another popular Republican target, Fani Willis, who came back strong. And actually, both of them, their numbers were better than they were the first time around. So not only did they come back, they came back with a vengeance. So yay, and shout out to them. And standing on principle, and after having gone through what has to be one of the worst attacks that used the legal system to be an instrument of those attacks on their personal lives and professional judgment of anything I've ever seen, is absolutely unconscionable. And I'm so excited that the people of Fulton County saw through all of that and brought her back. And while we're on Georgia, not just Fulton, but come on, Gwinnett, with your people. Come on, Cobb County. So we now have a trio of sisters serving in the Atlanta metro area. I am excited not only for what they're going to do in their respective counties, but the opportunities that they may have to work together to address what's happening in the Atlanta metro. So shout out to Georgia. This is certainly another example that we can look to Georgia and say that something really exciting happened. I would be remiss if I did not also talk about the first Black woman to serve as prosecutor, which is state's attorney in Kansas City, Missouri, my hometown, Melissa Jackson. And listen, this is just the beginning of the story. We had Black women running for prosecutors all over this country, and they won. And so I'm going to end on that happy story, because I know the criminal justice system impacts so many. And it is great to now have these sisters and a few others serving in a position where they understand what it is, not only to be a victim of crime, but to also deal with people who may have committed crimes in your community for a sundry of different reasons. And we need people who understand the interest of our public policy and the intersection of criminal justice. And I'm so happy to see these sisters elected. So I want to invite everyone to come back and join us next week, because we will be doing our wrap up, wrap it up. But before then, I want to remind you that we are in a time where we should be excited and proud of what Black people have done in 2024. Special shout out to my 92 percenters. I want you to feel good and celebrate the historic wins of Black women in all of these positions that we've talked about, and go to our website, Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote. In the next few days, we're going to be dropping our full report of what happened with Black women. I want you to be a part of amplifying the good news of Black women's wins. Let's not end this year on a Debbie Downer. Let's end it in joy and celebration for all of the Black women who ran and all of the Black women who won. And let's remind people that our power has continued to be strong and grow. And I just want to say, remind them to watch us work, because in 2025 and 2026, new things are going to be happening for Black women and their candidacy. New things are going to be happening in Black women's leadership. Anybody who told you we was done was lying to you. We might be done with certain things, like letting you take advantage of us. We might be done with certain things, like letting you abuse and misuse our community and our leadership. But we just getting started on exercising our power. We just getting started on expanding our leadership. And we are certainly just getting started on Clap Back, Get the Facts podcast. Because while we got one more episode to go in this season, we are going to be back for season 2. So you want to find out all you can with that. Until then, we're going to see you next week. Please, please, please plan to join us for the wrap up. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to be talking about all things Clap Back, Get the Facts. I bet it's going to get a little spicy and you don't want to miss it. Till next time.
Thank you for joining us here on Clap Back, Get the Facts podcast. We hope that you're leaving feeling more informed and ready to provide others with the facts. We would love to hear your biggest takeaways from this episode. So post the show on your Instagram story and tag us at Sisters Lead. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, please leave a review so others can get some sense of the facts that we're providing. Finally, if you would like to learn more about local resources and other projects we're working on, go to Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote,